You're welcome to another video of Juniper Security Associate course. In this section, we will learn how to Juniper SRX web filtering. With web filtering, we have the capability to filter web traffic based on URLs and URL categories. We have three methods to implement web filtering: local, WebSense redirect, and enhanced web filtering. The first two methods, local and WebSense redirect, are the methods that we will discuss in this section. With Juniper SRX web filtering feature, you are able to filter web traffic based on URL and URL category. Three versions of URL filtering exist to implement. In the local web filtering, you configure URL and URL categories locally in the device itself. This type of implementation does not require any license. With WebSense redirect web filtering, we redirect URLs to the WebSense appliance where the administrator has previously configured which URLs are allowed. This type of implementation also does not require any license. Enhanced web filtering is another type of web filtering which is based on cloud information, including URL category and URL reputation. This type of implementation does require license, and we will discuss it in the next section. Configuring web filtering feature is like all other UTM features. In the first step, we have to enable web filtering feature and the type of it. We have four options: local web filtering, WebSense appliance redirect-based web filtering, enhance web filtering, or to disable web filtering. In the second step, we configure web filtering profile. When we use local web filters, we need to configure at least one blacklist or one whitelist containing URL and URL categories to be blocked or permitted. We also configure fallback settings for the URLs neither in whitelist nor in the blacklist. We also have the option to configure a custom message that will be displayed to the users facing with a block URL. If we use WebSense web filtering, then we only need to configure the IP address and the port to connect to the WebSense appliance. This is because permitted or denied URLs are configured in the WebSense appliance and not in the Juniper device itself. In the third step, we configure a web filtering policy. The only configuration in web filtering policy is to use one of the configured web filtering profile. And in the last step, web filtering policy will be applied to a security policy, exact like other UTM features. In the first step, we have to enable web filtering and the type of web filtering to be used. With the command set security UTM default configuration web filtering type, you see that there are four options to be configured as we have discussed earlier. Here I enable local, Juniper local web filtering, and then commit. To configure a local web filtering profile, first we have to configure URL pattern custom object, including as many URLs that we wish. Custom object also support wildcard. Then we have to create as many categories that we wish that include URLs patterns configured in the first step. Then we configure an action for each URL category to be permitted or blocked. Here we create a URL pattern custom object with the name of blacklist, including two URLs, *juniper.net and the IP address 1100. Another URL pattern custom object with the name of whitelist, URL whitelist, including only one URL, *msn.net. Then we create two categories with the name of whitelist cat and blacklist cat, including URL whitelist and URL blacklist, which is already configured in the custom objects. Then we configure the action block for URLs inside the blacklist category, and the action permit for the URLs inside whitelist category. We also configure log and permit action as the fallback action for the URLs that are not configured in any category. In the last line of local web filtering, we configure a custom message access denied to be displayed to the users when a URL is blocked, and then we copy and paste and then commit. If you have selected to use WebSense redirect web filtering, then we don't need to configure any URL patterns locally, and they will be configured in the WebSense appliance. But what we configure in this case is in Juniper SRX devices to configure the IP address of WebSense appliance and optionally the port to connect to the device. We can also configure fallback settings to configure the action when Juniper SRX cannot connect to the WebSense appliance, or the connection to the WebSense appliance is timed out, or the URL is not configured in the WebSense appliance. Let's copy and see the options of the fallback. Commit. To see the fallbacks option here, I use the question mark. The default server connectivity when device cannot connect to the server, timeout fallback action with the connection to the server timeout, and too many requests, fallback option when the requests exceed the limit of engine, which I've configured only the default option here. In the next step, we configure web filtering policy, UTM policy, web filtering policy. There is not a lot to configure in web filtering policy. We only configure and enable one of the configured web filtering profile in the web filtering policy. Here we enable web filter local profile, which we have already configured, and then we enable in the policy with the name of web filter local policy, and paste and then commit. In the last step, we have to apply the web filtering policy in a security policy. From untrust zone to the trust zone, there is a default permit rule that permit everything, in which we configured in the previous sections. At the end of then permit command, we add web filter UTM policy, web filter policy, web filter local policy. So Control C and then paste and then commit. These are all the configuration that we need to enable web filtering in a Juniper device, in Juniper SRX device. To make sure that web filtering policy is configured and activated, we have two main monitoring commands with the command show security UTM web filtering and then status. You can make sure that web filtering is activated. It also shows the type of web filtering policy, and with the command show security UTM web filtering statistic instead of status, you can follow and monitor statistics related to the web filtering policy, the number of hits based on URL and URL categories.